Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just give people a few moments to join. We'll be with you shortly. Right. Right, I think the room has calmed down a little bit, so we'll get started. Good afternoon. My name is Richard Ayres. I'm a social care advisor at Care England and want to welcome you today to our webinar titled Waste Excellent, Cost Saving, Carbon Reduction and Quality Improvement. In today's session, we're going to explore how care providers can take practical steps to improve sustainability through smarter waste management. We'll look at how simple operational changes such as better waste audits, improved segregation and engaging staff and residents can really help to reduce costs, cut carbon and strengthen environmental performance. With increasing expectations around sustainability and with new recycling regulations, which we'll cover shortly now in place, this session will really provide a practical roadmap for care homes to improve efficiency, meet compliance requirements and really embed sustainability into everyday operations. You'll also hear real examples of how providers are improving recycling rates and reducing waste costs, along with guidance on how data and simple processing changes can really drive measurable results. So today's format will consist of myself covering the housekeeping initially, and then I shall hand you over to Nick Power, who is the head of sector, and he will introduce Gavin Anderson, the head of policy and stakeholder engagement at Veolia, who have kindly come here today to talk us through the subject of waste management. They're going to talk for about 25 to 30 minutes, after which I'll moderate a Q&A session to open up to any questions that you might have. When our presenters are talking, you are free to use the chat function. Alternatively, I will drop my email address into the chat shortly if you prefer to email any questions in confidence, and I will ask those questions anonymously on your behalf. We will ask, though, during the presentation, if you keep yourself on mute, that would be very much appreciated. And as I said, I will facilitate a Q&A afterwards, and you can raise any questions that have come up, or I will raise questions that have come up in the chat or email. At this point, you're also free to raise your hand if you would wish to do so, to ask any questions yourself. So we are recording the session, and our intention is, as always, to note any unanswered questions and to send any slides and a copy of any FAQ after the recording, usually within about 24 to 48 hours. So without further ado, please let me hand over to Nick to start things off. Nick.
Thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. As Richard said, I'm head of sector at Veolia for healthcare, and as we all know, this is a very demanding sector, and every minute and every pound counts. As that's why today we're not just talking about waste, we're also talking about unlocking hidden savings, ensuring absolute compliance, and making your operations demonstrably more sustainable. During the session, we'll talk about practical proven strategies you can implement right now, whether you're a single site or have multiple sites. Also joining me, as Richard mentioned, Gavin Anderson, our head of policy for Veolia. Gavin will start us off with insights into the legislative landscape over the next few years, and I'll lead on from Gavin with some insights into unlocking value within your estate through proven waste management strategies. Over to you, Gavin.
Thanks, Nick. And thank you very much for inviting me along to give a little bit of insight into what we can expect as far as policy is concerned and how that is relevant to this sector. So I have chosen to start today with what can only be described as a scary slide. And I make no apologies for the kind of cluttered nature of this slide. By no means will everything that is on this slide impact on everybody on this call, but it's an excellent demonstration of just how much policy and change is currently going on. So this covers circular economy, water and energy. Many of these things will have an impact on the care sector, and so it's really worth understanding what is coming down the track. And so part of the reason for kind of what we do in our policy team is monitoring all of what is happening in this space to try and make sense of it all, and hopefully we'll now spend some time kind of bringing some of that to life for you and zooming in on one or two of the areas that are particularly relevant for you. So if we move on to the next slide, the first area that we're going to consider is simpler recycling. So for simpler recycling, this slide is a bit of a reminder of the timeline. So it goes all the way back to 2024 when Wales first introduced its separate waste collections and segregated waste. To more recently, from March 2025, businesses with 10 or more employees had to have, as a minimum, a general waste, dry mixed recycling, and food waste. And so from that perspective, that is intended for businesses and commercial customers. And then looking forward from 2026, from this year, that is when households come on board, so they will require compliance with simpler recycling as well. And also looking forward to what's going to happen next year, small businesses, which will basically mean any business, must comply with the requirements of simpler recycling. And also it is when the introduction of separate collections for film and flexible plastics will come on board as well. And all of this is quite relevant as we lead into the potential for a 2028 inclusion of waste within the emissions trading scheme. So I'll just zoom in a little bit further on the next slide for simpler recycling and what it means and what you need to know. Well, I mentioned that as of 31st of March 2025, any business with more than 10 employees is required to separate their waste. So this would include waste produced by employees, customers and visitors. And care homes are considered under the legislation to be relevant non-domestic premises. So what that means in effect is that from 2025, the care homes with more than 10 employees should have been complying with the requirements of simpler recycling. Now, just to be clear, the little asterisk that's on there, that 10 employees is across your business. So it's not one site or per site. So for example, if you have a number of facilities and they have 2 or 3 people in each of them, then it is the aggregate collectively of all of those employees that is important, not how many you have on any given location. And care homes are specifically referenced in DEFRA's guidance as being in scope or as a relevant non-domestic premise. So the rollout of that is kind of well underway. The Environment Agency has said that it will take a pragmatic approach to enforcement of this, accepting that for some, particularly when you consider the introduction of food waste collections, for example, this could be quite new and there will take some time to transition. So they're not intending to take a heavy-handed approach, but what they have done is introduced a new charge, because the Environment Agency will have to assess compliance against sites that aren't permitted. So their rights and responsibilities aren't the same as if they were checking against someone that held a permit. And so they've introduced an hourly charge. So if the Environment Agency was to conduct a visit and they determined that there was non-compliance, then they are entitled to charge £118 per hour for the investigation and ongoing management of that non-compliance. It only kicks in if there is a non-compliance that is found. These changes don't impact the existing rules around clinical and offensive waste, which we'll get onto in a second as well. So that's simpler recycling. I want to take a little look on the next slide into another piece of legislation which is currently going through implementation. So this is digital waste tracking. So digital waste tracking is essentially the government trying to bring online and digitize all movements of waste. So after some engagement with Veolia and other parties, the government has taken a decision to implement this in a two-phased approach. So phase one is from October 2026. And the good news is that from the first phase, this will only impact on sites that are receiving waste. So that will be facilities that Veolia and other waste management organisations operate and are receiving waste to those. So anybody that is a permitted facility in receipt of waste needs to be preparing for the introduction of digital waste tracking from 2026. I'm pleased to say that we are very much doing that, and we're helping government to work through what is required from the digital interface and supporting the rollout of it ready for October 2026, and taking part in a beta trial to test it. Which means that when this is rolled out to the second phase, which will be kind of into 2027, as this suggests, that will then move on to capturing all waste within the movement, so producers and carriers of waste, and there will be a need for all waste movements to be tracked. Now, the good news is that because we are extremely well involved in the development of the process, when it comes to the actual rollout of phase two, we'll be able to support and manage and understand how to do that. So in the first instance, nothing to do for you guys, but something to be aware of, that we will need support going forward with managing and digitizing waste transfer movements. So that's digital waste tracking. And if I move on to UK emissions trading finally. So just a little reminder as to what is UK emissions trading. Well, the primary purpose of the UK emissions trading scheme, which already has a number of sectors like the aviation sector, the energy sector included, is to drive decarbonisation by effectively adding a carbon price to the emission of fossil carbon. So what that basically means is that the government set a cap of emissions, and those that are operating facilities that are emitting carbon must then surrender and buy allowances in order to meet their obligation. So we are currently looking at the scheme intending to provide a financial incentive based on a carbon price for various different sectors to look at how can you reduce the fossil content of your waste and ultimately reduce exposure to the carbon price, which is forecasted to go from where it is today, around £50, anywhere up to between £100 and £200 per tonne of carbon. So on the next slide, now that we've considered kind of what it is, this is why it matters. So the government is proposing to include waste from 2028. That date is subject to change because there are ongoing negotiations with the EU about combining UK and EU ETS. And so from that perspective, we need to watch that carefully, which we're doing. But at this present moment in time, DESNZ are intending to include clinical waste in waste that is in scope of UK ETS. So that means that the disposal of clinical waste from potentially 2028 onwards could well incur an additional cost related to the carbon price, like I say, forecasted to be upwards of £100 per tonne. Now, we have been strongly opposed to the inclusion of clinical waste in UK ETS. We've already successfully engaged and lobbied government to exclude hazardous waste. And for similar reasons, we think that clinical waste should be exempt on the grounds that in most instances, clinical waste has no alternative and it must go to be disposed of through incineration. And so why do we need your help? Well, we need as many voices to make this argument to DESNZ as possible. And so we'll be looking for support from the sector to try and make the case, but also to drive the right behaviours and ensure that DESNZ's fears of the non-clinical waste will be included in clinical waste that goes to incineration, are allayed through proper segregation and support of the sector along with waste management to try and drive improvements and if ultimately remove as much plastic from the waste as possible. And that is everything from me. So I will hand back across to Nick to carry on.
Thank you, Gavin. In this section, I'd like to talk about how you can unlock value within your estate, firstly by understanding your waste. Policy certainly sets the stage, as Gavin has showed us, but the real change happens in your bins. We've seen time and time again that the biggest savings are literally being thrown away. Waste audits don't just help check a box, they're the foundation. They help you establish measurable benchmarks and tracking progress. They also allow you to review current practices such as internal container provision, and they ensure that your care home is compliant. Veolia has a proven track record of supporting customers deliver savings whilst also meeting their sustainability goals, and our National Care Home Audit proves this. Real results. So I'd like to share some real results from a National Care Home Audit. Working with one of our largest partners, we conducted a simple controlled tip on just 3 general waste bins. The goal, to identify opportunities for improvement. And this is what we found. 76% of the general waste was actually general waste, which that sounds okay, right? But 70%, within that 76% was small items like coffee cups, wrappers, like crisp packet sweets, which can also be recycled. However, 13% should have gone into the dry mix recycling streams or DMR. This told us that there's immediate need for improved segregation, which can be achieved through better staff training, clearer signage and a revision of segregation points. We also found things like cable ties that are being used to tie the bin bags. We found this an unnecessary waste stream when speaking to the staff, and we were able to eliminate that immediately. Only 1% of waste was found was food. On paper, that sounds fantastic, and for the record, it is an outstanding figure, but it's still not compliant with legislation. More importantly, we've audited other homes in the same business where food contamination was as high as 47%. This shows you the spectrum of the challenge that we were facing. Finally, 10% was PP woven materials, like things like wraps, curtains. We have an existing recycling solution for this, either for free of charge or it can generate a rebate. We're now helping this customer implement a simple backhaul solution to backhaul that material and get it recycled. But what does that mean for you? This is the actionable part that you can start immediately. Conduct your own bin waste audit. Simply open your general waste bins and sort out the contents. Identify what is being thrown away that could be recycled. Look for quick wins. Spot those obvious items, paper, card, plastic cans, and roll out basic training with your employees immediately. Review current practices, assess your bin placement, your signage, your staff basic understanding of what goes where. Check for non-compliant practices. Go straight to source. Do you have a food waste bin in the general waste area? If so, understand where this is happening and is suitable for food or bin caddy could be placed. Establish your baseline. What is your current recycling rate? You can't improve without anything that you don't measure. Create simple measurements so you can track progress over time. Engage your current waste provider. Ask them hard questions. Ask what recycling options they can support you with. The simple foundation approach is what needs to improve recycling rates, which in turn reduces your carbon footprint, reduces your operating costs, and demonstrates environmental responsibility. Food waste recycling. As Gavin mentioned, simpler recycling is now in force, but I wanted to talk about food waste recycling value beyond compliance. This is not just about avoiding fines, it's about unlocking massive financial and environmental benefits. And with this, we have 2 success stories that prove the point. So case study 1, Dovehaven. It's a family-run care home with 19 sites in the UK. Before we partnered, their waste audit showed excessively heavy general waste bins filled with food, which was both a health and safety risk and highly inefficient. The solution and results: by proactively introducing a food recycling service, we help them achieve immediate, significant results over a 7-year partnership. These were being 22.5% reduction in annual waste costs, 15% increase in the recycling rate, and 100% landfill diversion. Crucially, the waste audit also uncovered a hidden inefficiency. They were over-ordering produce in their kitchens. This insight led to an internal procurement project that delivered additional unexpected savings, proving a thorough waste audit is far more than just a compliance exercise. Our second case study, we partnered with Crinvest Care Group in the Northwest, operating across 10 sites. The challenge: their initial audit showed general waste bins overfilled with recyclables, including food waste, glass, driving up disposal costs. The solution of the results: in preparation for recycling or simpler recycling, we introduced food waste, glass, and dry mix recycling, or DMR containers. This simple change led to immediate and measurable improvements: an annual cost reduction of 18%, a 23.65% increase in recycling, all while maintaining 100% landfill diversion. And since February 2025, the methods presented over nearly 2,000 kilograms of carbon emission savings. It's important to note that success of both these initiatives would not be achievable had we not support with on-site engagement and education with teams, reinforcing that the people factor is critical to making waste excellence happen. National Care Group. Another success story with National Care Group, where that waste audits uncovered 47% of food contamination in general waste bin and a further 20% mixed recycling contamination. The challenge: we conducted a deep dive analysis and found that the source of the major issue was the kitchens. The area lacked adequate bins. Instead, they were using trolley systems that made transfer recyclables outside messy and caused contamination. Crucially, there was no internal food waste provision. The solution: we implemented 2 simple but powerful changes. Segregation at source: we introduced color-coded bins in the kitchen for easy segregation, along with focused training for kitchen staff. And covering hidden supply chain waste, we also started benchmarking food spend per bed across the estate. We found that the highest spender was spending 90% more per bed than the lowest spender. Why? The top spenders are ordering 3 full meals per resident. This highlighted a massive issue: over-ordering in the supply chain. By mitigating this, we helped the group reduce costs even further up the line. The results: the impact was immediate and dramatic. Before the project, this group was spending around £20,000 per month. Today, they're spending around £8,000 per month. They have more than halved their food waste costs and gained significant cost advantage simply by improving internal processes and using data to reveal procurement issues. Waste segregation excellence. I'd like to talk about waste segregation excellence and why it's important. Your internal waste management system is absolutely crucial. Why? Firstly, it ensures segregation at source, which means you're complying with simpler recycling legislation and avoiding potential charges. But the benefit goes far beyond compliance. Proper segregation is your direct route to significant cost reductions or cost management. Recycling is cheaper than sending waste to energy from waste or landfill. By reducing contamination and general waste volumes, you lower your disposal costs. Reducing your carbon impact: poor segregation forces recyclable materials into high carbon disposal routes. By getting it right, you ensure materials reach their most carbon efficient destination. And lastly, training and accountability. A structured system means your staff understand exactly what goes where, boosting participation and cutting contamination. We understand that it's not easy, especially in care home setting when reviewing internal segregation systems. Our partners highlighted the key challenges around everything in one bin generation, additional needs such as residents with dementia or other needs, and high staff turnover. Our solutions for success. Based on these findings, we developed solutions for both containers and your training materials. You need a system that works for your staff and your residents. Visual clarity: forget complex words, use color-coded bins and clear pictorial labels. We've even had care homes successfully engage residents to design the posters, driving interest and understanding. Consistent placement and access: keep the bins in the same location for routine and familiarity, and ensure that they are easy physical access, no heavy lids. Segregated containers, make sure the tools are right. This means housekeeping trolleys with segregated compartments and the right bins in resident home. Ask your waste management provider for cost-effective solution that works best for your operations. And lastly, simple language. Use a simple everyday term rather than complex waste jargon. In our perspective, segregating 100 tonnes of dry mix recycling helps avoid around 121 tonnes of CO2, which is the equivalent of taking 26 cars off the road every year. Your team is absolutely essential to achieving your recycling goals. They are on the ground making decisions about what goes where every single day, and here's how to empower them. Green champion. Designate a green champion, a sustainability leader. This person can spearhead your initiatives, support the implementation of green plans for future CQC audits, and lead the charge for change at your facility. For multi-site organisations, they become the focal point, enabling effective communication across all your locations. E-learning. For customers, you can leverage Veolia's e-learning platform for staff onboarding and ongoing training. A perfect example, one national care home achieved a 14% recycling increase using this tool. And remember, we also offer free training resource via our website, which you can access today. Custom recycling guides and posters. Deploy tailored materials where your staff and residents will see them in resident rooms, family newsletters, common areas, and staff orientation packets. Customize these guides to match your specific waste streams. Don't go it alone. Consult with your waste partner for assistance. We're here to help clearly identify recyclable materials. And lastly, maintain team engagement. Finally, you have to talk about it. Communicate your recycling objectives and celebrate achievements with your staff. Help them understand why behind your efforts. When they understand the purpose, they'll become fully invested in the success. Waste data excellence. Data is paramount, especially in today's current environment. It's how you track your recycling progress, and more importantly, it's how you find those critical improvement opportunities. At Veolia provides you with the numbers, container weights, disposal methods, and crucially, the carbon footprint saved. This helps our customers prove they are doing the right thing. Here's how you can get your data right for cost reduction and increased recycling. 1, schedule efficiency. Simpler recycling rules may have completely changed how you produce, which means your current collection schedule might not work anymore. You need to check the following: current waste volumes. Look at your contract's average weight and compare them with what you're actually throwing away. Monitor bins. If your bins are consistently underfilled, reduce the number of bins and how often they're collected. That saves you money. If your bins are constantly overfilled, increase collections to avoid those costly extra charges for overweight bins. For matching your collection schedule of your actual waste, you'll avoid unnecessary cost and ensure efficient service. Benchmark your rates. You need to ensure that you're not overpaying your current provider. Veolia can supply a proposal that allows you to benchmark your existing rates against competitive market pricing. If your contract hasn't been reviewed recently, you may have been subject to price increases. A Veolia proposal will help you guarantee you are receiving the best value. On average, we can save a care home around 20% per annum on their waste management costs. League tables. For multi-business sites, league tables are a great way to see which sites are recycling the most and the best. This means you can add this to your waste provider. Target resource to understand performing sites. Take best practices from your high-performing sites. At Veolia, we will benchmark you against industry averages. And disposal methods. Do you know what happens to your waste? Tracking disposal methods will enable you to ensure that your waste is being treated in line with the waste hierarchy. This is a key demonstration of environmental responsibility. Proven results. Veolia has worked in partnership with the healthcare provider since 2019, providing waste management solutions to sites across the UK. And by working together, we can implement targeted improvement strategies that include league tables, an account manager resource, webinar for staff training, and the implementation of DMR awareness campaigns. In 12 months, we saw recycling increase from 30% to 38.31%, and their general waste costs came down approximately £1,000 per month. And lastly, as waste management experts and Care England member, we provide a valuable resource and information accessible to you. We are regularly uploading articles to our Care England page discussing everything from recycling, carbon and myth busting. You can also stay informed about upcoming webinars and industry news by following Veolia UK on LinkedIn. If you would like any links to our free resources, please get in touch. And finally, the free waste audit. We are offering Care England members a complimentary waste audit from Veolia's special team, offering tailored insights and expert recommendations designed specifically for your facility's unique needs. This is your opportunity to gain both the knowledge and the tools to drive real, measurable change. We'll provide you with details at the end of the webinar on how to book. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. That's great. We can take the slides down now if you want to, Kelly. That'd be great. Thank you very much. I mean, I get incredibly excited by waste. I've been looking at waste for probably the last 14 years of my professional career as a procurement professional, and you know, coming into care services and looking at waste and seeing how much opportunity there is there. You know, I get excited by the opportunity. I think the simple recycling rules and changes are really interesting. It kind of sets that roadmap of what we need to do. And thank you, Gavin, for helping us to understand the impact of the Environment Agency and that £118 charge, I think it was, that they can charge if we don't get it right. But that's the sort of the stick, you know, not the carrot. We've always led with the carrot. Now we've got the stick saying we've kind of got to do it because they could turn up at any time on our doorstep. And it's really important that we start to look at waste and that we're not tarnished with a label of non-compliance. We are still seeing across adult social care lots of people wasting money on waste disposal, and it's, you know, it's really good to see that the audits that you're providing and, you know, the fact that people can do their own audits will really help us to kind of see that change. I think the self-audit is a really important one as well, but you know, knowing you can tap into that with Veolia, and I know you take a bin away, literally empty it and go through it and provide a great report on what people can do is really important. But you know, I've seen over the last 10, 12 years, there is so much that can be done, so much more that can be done in terms of waste from segregation. And it's interesting to see those savings of kind of like 22% from one audit and 24% increased recycling on another audit, and then a 47% on waste food contamination. You know, when you've got a little bit of food waste in general waste, it contaminates potentially the whole load. And general waste is more expensive to dispose of than most other waste streams. So actually, by segregating those waste streams, you can really see some significant reductions, which I think is really helpful. And, you know, the clear message is, as you said, Nick, there, segregate a source. It helps you to reduce costs, reduce your carbon impact, and it really is about taking staff on that journey. Clear bin labelling, and it's great to see those free training resources that are available through Veolia, because they are helpful. People don't necessarily think we need to train staff on waste, but it's a huge cost differential. If we don't, we're going to pick up a huge tab. And you know, you've said there at savings of up to 20%, fantastic. And I like the idea of the benchmarking as well. So how do I know whether I'm doing enough? You've got benchmarking data that helps me do that. So benchmarking either site by site within a group or benchmarking with other peers if I'm a single care service, that's really incredibly helpful. So thank you for that. I found that very, very useful. We have had a few questions pop in. So the first one, Michelle asks, and Michelle's mentioned that the challenges with bin storage when recycling is already in place and waste streams are to be added. So a lot of care homes haven't got a huge amount of space. What's the tactic usually for dealing with those spaces, Nick, when we've got to add additional bins in?
I think most of the time when there's restraints like that, we would arrange a visit to understand what would work best for the site. So consult very much at the site level. There might be things that we can use some smaller bins on a higher frequency that still ensures that the sites are still in line with legislation. But I think there's no one size that fits all, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I know that when we looked at food waste recycling when it came in last year, we were often able to say to care services, well, you can get rid of one of those 1100 litre bins and you can replace it with a food waste bin. So yes, you're increasing your streams. It's not like a domestic home environment where you're adding another bin. You can actually probably reduce one of your 1100 litres. Obviously, if you've only got one 1100 litre bin, you have got additional bins, but yeah, the different sizes can then kick in. Another question, how do other groups manage recycling for households? Households meaning the different units within care services. through to main kitchens, external bins, without having recycling stations in each sort of various different parts of the organisation. Have you come across that from some of your audits?
Not specifically. I can certainly if you want to direct that question at me, and I can try and find some more details on it. But again, it's always quite unique in terms of when we've got quite specific needs like this, we can find a solution for that need.
So I know when you go and you conduct your sort of site audit, someone will walk around the buildings and you've got waste generated in numerous different parts of the care service. You know, is it your sort of suggestion usually to have multiple sites where waste can be segregated at numerous parts across the organisation, or do you sort of try to sort of suggest that people have one bin and then you have someone else taking it away and segregating it?
Again, ideally, yeah, it would be whichever method would support the better segregation. So if one premises that multi-bin would work, then absolutely. If for another site the reduced number of internal bins works, then by all means. But again, it would be on a site by site basis.
Okay, but we still need to segregate that food waste because it can contaminate things. Great.
All about segregation, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, we'll maybe pick that up with you offline afterwards to see if someone can give some examples of how others have done it. I know if you've got NCG, it'd be interesting to see how they've done that with some of their larger services. Should all waste providers be supplying data of bin weights for each site, or is that only from October 26 that it becomes mandatory? That might be for you, Gavin.
Go on.
Sorry, repeat the question for me, Richard. Sorry.
Should all waste providers be supplying bin data for the weights of bins for each site, or is that only from October 26?
So the requirement around monitoring of the actual data and mandatory provision of that are something that is still being looked at by DEFRA. There was talk about that being introduced, but it hasn't they haven't taken that forward just yet. So something that we can keep you up to date on as far as any but I think they're concentrating on digital waste tracking as a solution to try and push that forward as well. So
brilliant, thank you. And I've got another question here. Are we allowed to have health waste and general waste bins in the same waste corral? I'm not sure I fully understand that question. I wonder whether, is it Pam who asked that one? Pam, would you be able to maybe just pop on, come off mute and ask that question, just to make sure I've understood it correctly? We may have lost Pam, but in terms of, I mean, you would general waste bins and clinical waste bins would be separate. They're separate streams. There's no reason why they can't be stored in the same places, but they are definitely separate streams. I think hopefully I've understood the question correctly there, Pam.
I think you're right. I think sometimes you get, because some providers bins look like clinical waste bins, and I think sometimes that can cause a little bit of confusion.
Brilliant. Okay, and Liz has asked about the areas that Veolia cover. I believe it's national, isn't it?
National, yes.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Do we need to have food waste collection if we do not serve food or have small volume? That's a one for you, really, Gavin. So, you know, when do you and don't you need those food waste collections?
So it is worth pointing out that in England, unlike in Scotland, for example, there is no de minimis on food waste. So for England, that you must have a food waste collection in any event, even if you have just the apple cores of your staff from their lunch, then food waste collection is still required. There is a de minimis in other parts of the UK, but that was something that wasn't implemented for England. So again, we would have kind of full knowledge of that, depending on where in the country that you are, to make sure that your provision complies with the devolved rules. But for England, to be clear, there is no minimum weight, so it's any amount of food waste must have a food waste collection.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that one. And Kelly has managed to clarify Michelle's question around other groups recycling. So this is one example, is that the segregated trolleys that the housekeeping teams use to transport waste from the households through to external bins. My experience is when you would go to the various different households throughout the organisations, you would see multiple bins, one for food waste, one for general, one for dry and mixed recyclables, like you would see in most other sort of retail outlets. That's generally what we would see, but it is the internal processes and the space and capacity you've got to be able to do that that really drives those restraints. Will the environmental agencies, and another for you, Gavin, here, be actively investigating to identify non-compliance? What, are we likely to have them turn up on our doorsteps? Are there people whistleblowing? How does it work?
So they are resourced to maintain compliance, and so what I'm not saying is that you can expect a kind of a whole fleet of them outing every town and every city, kind of assessing compliance, but they are actively looking to make sure that they are supporting people. So in the first instance, they're expecting to take a relatively pragmatic approach of trying to support people and understand why they can't comply, and it would be kind of only if there was issues that were identified that they would choose to kind of levy the hourly charge. So they're very much taking a supportive approach to it, but are actively looking to do this. There is opportunities to whistleblow as well. So if you felt as if there was some instances where the people weren't complying, then there is an opportunity to do that also. But yeah, I think it's very much a supportive and a pragmatic approach rather than a kind of heavy-handed approach that they're suggesting.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. In terms of average recycling rates and kind of landfill sort of diversion from homes, Nick, is there anything you can kind of share with us on sort of average recycling rates? What could care providers kind of be achieving? Have you got any data that you can share with us on that?
Yeah, on average, customers or partners that we contract with, on average, around the recycling rates around about 42%. We've got some instances with some sites are achieving up to 77%, but on that we're achieving a total 100% landfill diversion.
Okay, so but 42% is sort of like an average that you're seeing, yeah. But there is the capacity to increase that quite significantly. And that very much comes down to the bin labelling point I think you talked about earlier, and making sure staff are trained and they understand, because I mean, even just down to things like plastics, it's really confusing as what plastics you can recycle, what ones you can't. Do we do bottle tops? Are there going to be bottle tops on, bottle tops off? What foil, what's contaminated? It can be quite complicated, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't help a lot with how things are being segregated at the home is very different to what the local council are collecting in their own homes for staff, and that can kind of lead to confusion a little bit sometimes. So definitely, we said before, staff engagement, education is vital to achieving some of those rates.
And I think some councils do things differently. Again, yes. We're seeing more consistency, but councils are still, they've got different processes. Some do glass separately, some do glass in with dry mix recyclables. It's not consistent nationally. So if you're a group and you're working across multiple authorities, your own training can be quite challenging.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and again, it does absolutely cause confusion. Again, that's why we very much work with customers and deploy clear training programs, make signage simple, very pictorial, and that tends to work quite well.
Fantastic. Michelle's just asked a clarification, actually, question. Just checking her understanding. How can we report carbon reduction if we don't have specific waste data? Weight data, sorry.
You can speak to your provider. I'm sure they'll have something that they'll be able to provide you as a baseline, and then tracking savings across the estate. So if you've converted more bins to recycling, you can track the weight to that. Certainly, speak to your current providers, they should in some ways be able to provide some weight data, even if they provide you some average weight data across their operation.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're charged on a lift, and the lifts are weighed. There's a waste transfer note which should contain the weights, and if you're not given all of the information, you can take those weights, which should be available on your waste transfer notes, which you should be given a copy of, I believe, because that's a requirement. Please do correct me if I'm wrong there. You can go on the government's website and find the average kind of carbon per waste stream, can't you, and get those the carbon reductions or the carbon content yourself to do those calculations. We can probably try and provide a link with those with the slides that we share later. Hopefully, Michelle, that's answered the question. If it hasn't, please do, pop your hand up or something and we'll bring you in. If bins are consistently underfilled, how is a collection schedule or a bin volume reduced to ensure cost savings are immediately realised and not held up by contractual minimums? That's a great question.
Certainly, yeah. So we as a commercial team, we carry out regular checks across contracts to ensure that that we're not transporting thin air, and we'll consult with customers if whether they want to reduce bin collections or not. My advice would be that if you feel that your collection schedule is higher than it needs to be, then consult with your waste management company. Show them some evidence of bins being collected with thin air, and ask for a reduction of your schedule and see if that works. Yeah, I think that's one of the tactics that we did previously. Is we would every so often we would go and check the bins when it was due to collection day. We'd say, well, have I got 4 bins that are half full? Could I go down to 3 bins which are sort of 3/4 full, and that saves me a lift charge. And those lift charges can vary. We've seen people paying up to 30 or 40 pounds a lift, and we know we can get them a lot less than that. So checking the bins periodically, whether you've got a maintenance operative who does that or whether it's the staff popping out and doing it, is a really good, sensible thing to do, and looking at that over a period of time, because it does vary sort of week on week. You have mentioned waste audits as well. Can you maybe just talk us through what a waste audit really does involve, and how can a care provider, if they want a waste audit, how can they request one of those? Certainly, yeah. So we've got in Veolia, we've got a widespread commercial team that are very clued up professionals and understand what good waste practices look like. So it usually takes about 30-minute visit. We'd like to speak with many staff as possible, look at the bin areas, and then we'll go through the bins and identify areas of non-compliance. So we're looking at your general waste bins. Is any obvious signs of recyclate material or food waste material being thrown away in the waste? And then we'll work with you on what we think and the solution is that would one, reduce your waste collection, increase your recycling, but also ultimately that leads to cost savings. So I think we'll share a link at the end of this for you to be able to book in with us, or there's a link on our website. But it should take no more than 30 minutes. And if you've got any current data, that would be useful. But we'll be able to help you work towards a proposal or a solution. Brilliant. And I've done quite a few of these waste audits over the last 14 years, and I've never been at a site or seen a site that doesn't make a significant saving or see a significant finding that they just didn't know that they didn't know. So I've for 14 years now, I've been encouraging people to do waste audits, because unless you look, you don't know. And it's great that some people don't want to go down the bins. I'm not something I particularly enjoy myself, but having a waste professional to kind of do that for me, I think is something, and without charge as well, was something I definitely would be enacting. The last question so far, I think, is just really a lot of local authorities are looking at social value as being something important, and as care providers, when we're bidding for tenders, we've got to kind of talk about social value. What do you see as sort of social value? How does that kind of come across your threshold? What does it kind of mean in Veolia terms, social value, and how can kind of care providers kind of learn from your experiences and get involved with those initiatives? Sure. Social value. So we've done a lot of projects, such as Veolia's got its own charity, which anyone can apply for funding on that. But we've done projects such as garden projects where we've like planted trees and stuff with care home guests. Very much engagement with guests on recycling rates, as we've said before. Participation in implementing posters and things, and also residents, families, engagement with them in terms of recycling initiatives in or outside of the practices themselves.
So, and thanks for that, Nick. So just from what I take from that is that you're not just investing in adult social care because you want to pick up more bins, you're investing to make a difference and make a change as well, to change recycling. Because bottom line is that the more efficient we are as providers, that's more of a commodity to waste contractors. You can do more with that waste if we can segregate it. So it becomes almost in somewhere down the stream a revenue for somebody. So, you know, it's really positive to segregate waste, but you're invested in kind of training, supporting staff, educating staff as well, and, you know, getting involved with social initiatives to kind of help support the S in the ESG requirements that we've all got to kind of submit to local authorities. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you would, I mean, Kelly's dropped, what's that Kelly's dropped in there? Sorry, Kelly, do you want to explain that for us? Oh, how to apply for an audit, I take it. So if you'd like to click on that link in the chat, we'll make sure that goes out with the notes. Sonam will take a note of that link, and we'll make sure that goes into the email that we share with you after with a copy of the slides of the recording. But if you are interested in a waste audit, please do click that link and arrange contact with Nick, Kelly and one of the team, and they will make contact with you to conduct an audit.
Sorry to interrupt, Richard. That link is actually for Veolia Orchard. So what Nick just alluded to in terms of social value. So if any care homes want to apply for funding from our charity for things like plants and trees, they can do so through that. It's now open to the care home sector too.
Fabulous. And would you just drop in the link for the audit as well, Kelly? Just so people
Absolutely, I'll do that now for you.
Amazing. Gavin and Nick, that's incredibly helpful. Thank you so very much. Our audience participation stayed throughout, and that's usually a sign that they've enjoyed the session. So I've enjoyed it, but you know, I'm obsessed with waste and trying to kind of reduce it and make things more efficient. Is there any final words that you want to leave with those that are on the call?
Just a very big thank you for me, and if anybody does have any questions on the policy side of things, then please feel free to reach out.
We'll share your contact details with people afterwards as well, if that's okay, Nick, Gavin and Kelly.
No, thank you, Richard.
Thank you all very much for joining, and we'll make sure some materials are sent out to you over the next 48 hours. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, everyone.
If the Veolia team, Kelly, if you want to stay on,